The choices that my parents made, that's their choices. Now I have the opportunity to make my choices.
Hello, you are listening to NPE Stories. This is a podcast where NPEs can share their story. I am your host, Lily, and I found out I was an NPE through an Ancestry DNA test that changed my life forever. NPE is a term that stands for Not Parent Expected or Non-Paternal Event. This means that one or more of our parents are not who we believe them to be. NPE Stories is a podcast where NPEs can share their story of what their original family was like, how they found out they were an NPE, and what their journey has been like since the day they found out. And welcome to episode 241. And if you're listening and enjoying this podcast, please rate and review. Go ahead and give the podcast 5 stars, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening. Thank you so much for being here today. And I'm going to get right into our guest today. Today, I am speaking with Danny. Hi, Danny.
Hi, Lily.
How's your morning going?
It's been a good morning so far. How's yours?
It is good. It is beautiful here, and you are the only thing on my calendar today. I love it. And you just had to run out of class to get here. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's okay. It's the last week, so I just needed to go in to get some finals done, and I thought I would have got out in time, so I'm just a little late today.
Oh my gosh. Good luck with finals and with the last week of school.
Thank you, thank you. I am excited for it to be done, though.
So you are an NPE, is that correct?
Correct.
Correct? Okay. And we are going to go ahead and get into your story. So let's find out. Let's start with your family of origin. Why don't you explain to me who was in your raising family and a little bit about your childhood, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah. So, I was born in Los Angeles to a mom and dad, and 2 years later, my sister was born, and then I believe about 7, 8 years later, another sister, and then 10 years later, a brother. So me and my brother are about 10 years apart, and we grew up a lot in LA, moving around a lot throughout Southern California. It's where I've been kind of all my life, and it it was like a pretty normal childhood, I would say. We went to church, went to school, hung out with my siblings, played with them, fought with each other, of course. It's pretty standard. And I didn't really expect the NPE status, of course. I don't think anybody does because obviously it's NPE. But I do remember when I was about 8 to 10 years old, my aunt specifically, and she could have been trying to drop hints, I guess, but she kept mentioning how much I look like my mom. And I was like, yeah, I do look like her. I mean, it's so weird. All my siblings look like my dad, but I look like my mom. And I just never questioned it.
Mm-hmm.
When I was about 11 or 12, I read a book about someone growing up in New York. And in that book, I was like, man, I want to go to New York. Why do I want to go to New York so bad? And I don't know if you believe in faith, destiny, whatever. It was just weird coincidence, I think, as I will explain later on. The family life was, like I said, pretty normal. It wasn't until I became a teenager where it got really hard. My dad and I started fighting and disagreeing on a lot of things. And I would say it was more so than the usual expectations of fights, like homework, being lazy, and sports kind of thing. It was more so the friends I had and the people I was hanging out with. So I am gay, and I was discovering my sexuality in middle school and high school, and my parents caught wind of that, and that's when all the fights started. So it wasn't a great teenage time. And it wasn't until I graduated high school and went to college that I leave. And I actually went no contact with both my mom and my dad for a couple of years. It wasn't until I was 25 when I reached out again to see if, we can heal our relationship and, form a relationship again. Because I do love my parents and I did miss them when I stopped talking to them. And we did. We slowly started talking. It wasn't just jumping right back into a familiar relationship right away. But then a couple years later, and this was about 3-ish years ago, my mom reaches out to me. And now I'm kind of getting into the story of how I found out. And it's a little bit different, which is funny. I'll explain a little bit later, than most NPE stories. And of course, every NPE story is unique, but I definitely want to share mine. But my mom and my dad started getting into arguments, and they are on the verge of divorce. And one day, while I was at work, I actually do remember the day. It was in November, election day of 2024, funny enough, or 2023, whatever it was. I just remember it being election day because that's all the news would be talking about. But my mom calls me up at work, and she calls me like 3 or 4 times, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, something's happened. I step out and answer the phone, and she goes, "Where are you?" "I'm at work." And I'm like, "Is everything okay?" And she tells me, "Yes, but I need to speak to you today. When are you off?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm off at like 8 o'clock. This is the address. Are you okay?" Because I knew the divorce was going on. And she tells me, "Yeah, I'm okay. I just need to speak to you." So, I go through work all anxious and nervous because I have no idea what my mom wants to talk to me about. And she gets to work, to my work, and I'm like, "Okay, did you want to go talk in a restaurant? Like, there's a couple of restaurants here that we can go to." And she goes, "No, this needs to be private. This is a private family matter." And I go, "Okay." So we go into the car, and I kind of let her lead the conversation because clearly it's weighing heavy on her, and she wants to share. And so I just kind of sit there, and we sit in silence for a couple minutes. She brings up a memory. She's like, "Do you remember when I told you I lived in New York?" I was like, "Oh, yeah, I do. I remember I was being jealous because I've always wanted to live in New York." And because she had shared when I was about 13 that she had moved to New York with a friend and lived in Queens and made friends out there and had a good time, but ended up moving back. Well, she started telling me she had went to a party and met this guy, and her and this guy like went out on one date. They didn't feel anything for each other, and that was that. She didn't think much of it. And then she was telling me this story, and I'm like, "Okay, right?" I was like, "Okay, why are you telling me about this guy?" Like, and I'm not gonna lie, the thought that this guy was my dad definitely popped in my head along with other different scenarios. I
Oh
was
no.
like, "Oh my gosh, was she gonna tell me?" So she's like, I was talking to this guy, and then I stopped talking to him, and then I moved back to California with your aunt." And I was like, "Okay." And then she just kind of goes silent, and she's like, "I came back pregnant." And I was like, "With me?" And she's, "Yeah, with you." And I just kind of sat there, and I'm like, I felt so many things. And it was hard too, because I can tell this was weighing heavy on my mom. So I felt all these things, and I felt like I had to contain them because I didn't want to upset her because she's already so upset telling me this. So I'm like sitting there going through this emotional turmoil inside eternally. And I just sit there and I'm just like, "Okay, like, mom, like, thank you for telling me. What brought this on?" What brought it on was my mom and dad were fighting again. And in the middle of the fight, in front of my siblings, my dad starts yelling about how she's a whore. And after the fight ends and they storm off from each other, my siblings kind of look at my mom and like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "I have to tell you this truth." So she tells them. This is all before she told me, by the way. So she tells them. So I'm like, "Oh, so my siblings know?" And she's like, "Yes." I'm like, "Who else knows?" She just looks at me. She goes, "Everyone." So yeah, that was, again, trying to keep it all inside, but it's hard. And I think she can pick up on it. She goes, "You're allowed to say whatever you want right now." And I'm like, she's like, "You're allowed to ask whatever you want." So I'm like, this guy, what's his name? Daniel. Does he know about me? Yes. Do you know where he is? I know his last address. Why was this a secret from me? And she tells me, well, when I was born, she originally wanted to name me Daniel. Um, Before I was born, when she moved back to California, my dad, my birth certificate dad now, reached out to her because they had dated in the past, but they broke up. And he heard she was back in California after the year she was gone, and he reached out to her and like, "Hey, did you want to go on a date with me again?" And my mom tells him straight up, "I just need you to know that I'm pregnant." And my birth certificate dad goes, "Okay, are you seeing the guy?" She goes, "No." And he's like, "Well, I'd still like to go out with you." So they do. She starts going out with him, but then she tells me my bio dad, my biological dad, he he was also he had learned that my mom was pregnant and had left New York from a mutual friend of theirs. So he tracked down her phone number and address and started sending her letters and calling her and saying, "Hey, like, why did you leave? Like, I didn't know you were pregnant. Like, that's my son." This was before she even knew if she was having a boy or a girl. He was adamant that I was going to be a boy, and I guess he was right. But he's like, "That's my son. Like, I want to raise him." So my mom was, torn between two people, kind of thing, and it was hard. She was an immigrant. She was in her young 20s. She was single. So I don't really blame her for the choices she made. I like understand them. I just wish she made better decisions, of course. But so my mom was kind of talking to the two of them, and she wasn't really sure what to do. And in the end, she had talked to a stranger, and it's always so funny how it's always a stranger that sometimes tends to like we tend to like pour our hearts out to. And she pours her heart out to a stranger when she was in the hospital. And this woman, she asked, "Well, who's actually here right now?" And then she goes, like my birth certificate dad. And she's like, "And where is the bio dad?" And she's like, "Back in New York." "And he hasn't come down?" "No." "Go with the guy who's here in the hospital, not the guy who wants you to go to him." So my mom did. So when I was born, she wanted to name me Daniel, but my dad was no, or my birth certificate dad, excuse me, goes, "No, why name him after him? You picked me. He's not even here. Name him after me." So that's what she did. And when I learned this story, that's why I changed my name to Danny, just to kind of honor my bio dad. But I kept my birth certificate dad's middle name to kind of, honor him as well, thanking for raising me, basically. But she did, and then throughout the years, she's always wanted to tell me when I was a kid. She wanted to tell me when I was about like 4 or 5 years old, because apparently there was one day where I had went up to her, and I tell her, I'm like, "Mom, I love you so much." And of course, she goes, "Oh, I love you too." And I look at her and I'm like, "Do you know why?" And she's like, "Why?" And I'm like, "You would never lie to me." My mom told me she broke down that night and she wanted to tell me. my dad goes, no, he's 4. He has no business like knowing any of this stuff. So my mom was like, okay. Then the teenage years came, and as mentioned earlier, there was big fights regarding my sexuality and my friends and everything like that. So my mom was like, I'm not going to add this layer of, extra trauma on top of trauma he's already experiencing. So she didn't say anything teenagers wise. And then when I graduated, as like mentioned earlier, I went no contact. So my mom had no chance to tell me. And it wasn't until we started reconciling, my mom was thinking about it again. But again, we were reconciling, and she didn't want to damage that. So of course she didn't tell me. And she was telling me, there's never a good time to tell you. And I'm like, I don't think there ever would be a good time to tell a
Mhm.
secret like this.
Yeah.
So she's like, the reason I'm telling you now is because she would rather tell me from, she would rather me hear it from a place of love and a place where I can ask questions instead of if my dad shouted out of anger and I would be kind of left, confused. So I understand that, but it was definitely a shock. So that that night, I kind of kept it a little bit internalized myself, and we went out to eat, and we were watching election results, and all I can think about was like, I have bio dad out there, all the jokes and between the siblings, like you're adopted, no, you're adopted, and all the questions about why do I not look like my dad? My hair is not curly. I don't grow like chest hair or body hair. I can't grow facial hair, but my brother and my birth certificate dad grow facial hair really well. I'm like darker skinned than my siblings. We're all Mexican, but I'm just browner than my siblings are. So just like just little things, but we all just attributed it to I just got my mom's genes, and that was it, or at least my siblings and I. But I do remember. Do you remember that show Switched at Birth?
It sounds familiar.
It was on ABC. I think I was in high school, so it must have been 2011, 2012. But it was on ABC, and it was about two girls who discovered they were accidentally switched at birth at the hospital, and their parents are not their biological parents. So that was a crazy concept. And one of the girls was deaf and everything, so that made it, it's a drama. So, but I remember watching that show, and I remember looking at my mom, and I was like, "Mom, could I have like a different parent?" Like as a joke. And she looks at me, and ever since she told me this, I remember it a lot more clearly. She looks at me and she's like, "You are my kid. You are my son." And I'm like, "Okay, right." Now that I think about it, I'm like, "Oh, she was saying she wasn't lying. She was just saying you are my son, not our son." She's like, "I gave birth to you," and I'm like, thinking back about it, it's like, I think she wanted to tell me, but she didn't tell me, but she didn't want to lie, so she just omitted the fact, which is
Mhm.
funny. It's a little backstory.
All right.
But when I had a boyfriend at the time, back in 2019, 2018, he had bought me an Ancestry DNA kit. And I went for it. I was like, yeah, let's do the kit. It would be a lot of fun. We downloaded the app. We did the swabs or the spit. And I got my results back a couple days later. And the closest match was like a third cousin. And I thought nothing of it. I was like, third cousin, don't even talk to them, right? They're not in my life. And I just looked at the genealogy report, and I called it a day. It's so funny. I remember when I opened up the app. I don't know if others experienced the same thing. When I opened up the app, when I got my results, it gave a warning, like warning, results may be unexpected, da 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 da, kind of thing. And I was just like, wow, that's crazy, right? Oh my goodness. Oh well, I have no reason to believe that would happen to me. And it didn't, not through Ancestry DNA or any DNA testing, which I think is even crazier because that's where like majority of NPEs find out they're NPEs. So I'm fortunate that it was my mother and was willing to talk to me about it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But ever since that answer to DNA test, I checked it once and I never looked at it again. And then a couple of years later, when I reconciled with my family, my sister for Christmas surprised my parents with a 23andMe test kit. And my mom told me she was terrified my sister was going to give me one. Yeah. But I had told my sister beforehand because she was telling me, she was like, "Oh, I want to get 23andMe test for the family for Christmas." And I was like, "Oh, I already did Ancestry." And she was like, "Oh, okay." So she didn't get me one. And
So you would have found out sooner had she gotten
yes.
you the 23andMe.
Yes, but she did not. And when she got her results, we didn't share them with each other. We would have found a lot of discrepancies in like the genealogy portion of side of it, or the like, the roots that we're from. She is more 50-50 split with like indigenous to Mexico, and 50% English, right? Or not English, Spaniard from Europe, right? And when I took my test, I was more 70-30. That would have been a big,
Mm-hmm.
clue to what was going on. Yeah, so we didn't share our results. She just kind of shared, "Oh, like it's so cool, like, we're like Mexican, but we also have like, you know, Spanish in us." And I was thinking the same thing. I was like, "Yeah, yeah, we are." Cuz a lot of it is like 30% Spanish. I was like, "Yeah, we are like Mexican and like some Spanish in us. Really cool." And that was the extent of our conversation to the results. And that's what happened. So that was a close call for my mom.
So did you go on a search for your bio dad?
I did, and it was impossible to find him. I had his name and I had his birth date, and that should have made it easy, but it did not. I couldn't find him on Facebook or any other social media. And I used those websites that like you can search for people through like records, public records, and things like that. And couldn't find anything. I found like numbers and names that I thought might be him, but when I called, there was no answer, or it went to different people. So I was ready to give in the towel, and I had done the search angels, and they weren't unable to help me either. So I was just ready to give him a towel. I was like, I don't think I'm ever gonna chance to like find him. And then it wasn't until I posted something in one of the MP groups on Facebook that someone reached out, and he was like, I work as a private investigator. Like I could help you out. And I was like, wow, that's so kind of you. Like I would love that. Like how much would like it be? And he's like, don't worry about it. I just want to help you out. So I gave him the information, and he calls me and he's like, I think I found him, or at least I found his boss. And I was like, that's great. He's like, here's the phone number. Like he wants you to call him. So I call this guy. He's like, hi. I go, hi. He's like, so you saying you're Daniel's son? And I go like, yeah, I think I am. He's like, tell me why you think you're his son. So I told him the story about my mom and how she was in New York and I moved back to California. And then he goes, yeah, that's her. You're the kid. And I was like, and I was so happy. And I was like, oh my God, did I finally find, you know, my bio dad? And this was about 6 months after I had learned the truth. So I was so happy. And I was like, did I find my bio dad? And then he's like, I'm really sorry to be the one to tell you this. He passed away 3 years ago.
Oh.
So I cried. It felt weird mourning someone you never knew or met. So he told me stories. They worked with each other since he moved to the United States of America. He was a manager of the restaurant, and they were like thick as thieves. They were best friends. That's why he knew about the story of what happened between Daniel and my mom. And he knew about me too, but he just said, like, your mom went to California, and one day the messages and or letters and calls stopped, and we have no idea what happened to you. And that like really broke me. After the mourning period, thankfully, he was able to connect me with his family and, on Facebook. And I saw some comments from some of his brothers and sisters, my aunts and uncles. And I saw a link to a GoFundMe. And I click on the link, and it was organized or set up by his daughter. So I get her email, I send her an email, and I just sit back and just wait. And that same day, she emails back and she's like, "Do you want to call?" Yes. So we both set some time aside, and she calls, and we just talk. She said at first she believed it was a scam. And it wasn't until she saw the link to my Facebook and saw my pictures that she say, "You look so much like Dad. You look exactly like him." And I saw the pictures too, and everyone keeps thinking, whenever I showed pictures of him when he was younger, everyone keeps thinking, "Is that you?" And I'm like, "No." Crazy. So she believed it right away when she saw the pictures after clicking the Facebook link. And I want to shout out her boyfriend to encourage her to entertain the idea. She was gonna delete the email, but he was like, "No, I have like half siblings. You should see if it's true. Click on the link," and she did. So shout out to her boyfriend for that. But she called and she's like, "So I have a brother." I was like, "I have another sister." So about she was born about maybe 2-3 years after I was, and she was an only child. And growing up, it sounds like my bio dad and my birth certificate dad were very similar in a lot of ways. Both worked very hard and long, long hours, so not spending a lot of time with the family. Both were quick to anger at times. But the main difference was when she had came out to him as bisexual, he was like, "All right, that's cool." I was like, "Man, I wish I had that kind of reaction." But she just told me stories about him and then about herself and her mom, and how she, growing up, she always wished she had a sibling, like a brother or sister. And then I go like, "Well, congratulations, you have a brother now." And it was an amazing chat that night. We talked for like 2 hours, shared my story, my side, who I was, who she was, our stories, and that was it. We became thick as thieves. I have her phone number, her social media. I actually went to visit her. She had moved to Texas with her mom. I went to visit her in Texas, and both her and her mom welcomed me with huge open arms, and her new family too. Her mom got remarried, and I was taken in. And one of the things that her mom told us was, "It feels like you were always meant to be here." And I was like, it does feel that way, doesn't it? So that was great. I was welcome, you know, by my half siblings and her mom, which is also really rare from my understanding and hearing the other podcast. But they shared stories, they shared pictures. I even was able to see my dad's ashes. It was nice. It was very, very, very nice. But it's weird. Very, very weird.
Very weird. Yes, this whole being an NPE thing is so weird. Had she heard of you? Had she ever heard stories of your existence?
So no, my bio dad Daniel, he had kept me a secret from everyone in his life except for his friend who knew, his best friend, of course. So no one really knew, but I guess he must have said or done things, or maybe he kept a letter or something from my mom, because my sister's mom, she goes up to him one day and she's like, "Do you have like another child somewhere?" And this is her telling me the story. And he keeps going, no, 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 I don't have another child anywhere. And she's like, if you do, I'm not mad. Like, I just want to be there for him or her because, it's your child. You should be there for him and her. And he just goes, no, 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 no. Just, I don't have another child. So my sister claims, like, yeah, that's kind of like him. Like, he probably, when my birth certificate dad kind of stepped in to raise me, he kind of just went hands off and was like, okay, he's being raised. And then he just had no interest to like pursue anything. It wasn't until I met, I guess, I don't know if he would be my cousin, but I guess my cousin, but it's on her mom's side of the family. It's family relationships are weird, but we're calling each other cousins, so that's what it is. So my new cousin sits me down when he visited, and when I was visiting, and he goes, I have a story to tell you. I'm like, okay, what's the story? So when my bio dad was on his deathbed, he went to go visit him, and the nurses greeting my cousin go like, "Oh, you must be the son he's talking about." He grew up visiting, my sister and my bio dad and her mom and everything, so they were practically like siblings. So he was just thinking, like, he sees me as like a son, right? And he goes in, and he says that my bio dad looks at him and goes, "Oh, my son, I'm so so sorry, my son, I'm so so sorry." And he's just going, "It's okay, it's okay. Like, I'm here, I'm here." He's like, "I so sorry. I never was there for you. I haven't seen you since you were a baby. I don't even like. I had no idea how you would look like." And then that's when my cousin kind of goes confused. He's like, "I was just here. He was deployed 3 years before that." But he's like, I grew up with you. Like, what do you mean since I was a baby?" And my bio dad just like, "I should have been there for you. I just know I love you." And my cousin goes, "Hey, it's me. It's so and so." And then my bio dad kind of comes back to reality and goes, "Oh, right, 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 right. It's you. It's you. I'm just out of it." And then that's where the conversation kind of ended. And then his cousin, when he heard about me after my sister told him about me, he's like, "That's who he was talking about. That's the
Oh,
kid that
wow.
he was talking about." Yeah,
He was thinking of you as he was dying.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Which gives some complicated emotions. Like, of course, it fills me with some joy that I was there in his mind. Fills me with some love that he would have loved me, or at least loved to meet me. It also fills me with like anger, like it was your deathbed, you know? You knew about me. And that same anger kind of goes to my mom and my birth certificate dad too. And not just them, but my whole family, all my aunts, my cousins, my uncles, grandparents, everyone knew. And like, you all just lied to me. You all like knew the truth. I was a secret, and I was being stupid, just walking around, be like, "Yeah, I look like my mom, ha ha ha." Oh yeah, you know, this is my dad. It just fills me with anger, and that story, yes, it fills me with joy, but it fills me with anger.
That's completely valid.
Yeah, I wish, I wish he didn't wait till his deathbed to say that, but at least I'm happy he did think of me in the end.
And you've changed your name, and you mentioned this earlier in this episode. Explain a little bit the thought process behind that and why you decided to do that.
Well, since I was named after my birth certificate father, and because of the big falling out we had, I did not like that we shared the same name. It made it confusing growing up. First of all, second of all, I just didn't want to be associated with him. So I had actually jumped to a couple name changers prior to finding out, just trying to find a name that fits. And when my mom had shared that that's the original name she wanted to name me, and then when I found out that he had passed away, and I'm never going to meet him, inside it was just like, you know, um, I want to change my name after him. to honor him. I am his biological kid. I'm not. Yeah, I am his biological kid, and my birth certificate dad. He did raise me, so I kept his middle name and honor him as well.
Yeah.
But also, just a part of it was just like, I'm so confused in this identity crisis now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to forge my own identity a little bit. And I know it kind of defeats the purpose of like taking somebody else's name, but I want to take his name to help forge my identity. So that's kind of where I ended up with that. And I do really like the name.
I love it. Yeah, you're a Danny now. And so now do you have to do like the documentation or have you done that? That's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. I've only done the social aspect of it. So socially, and when I introduce myself to people, it's always as Danny, and everyone's like, "Okay, Danny," and it's so natural. And but I haven't done it legally, documents and stuff, because that's a huge hassle. I got married,
Yeah.
and changing my last name was a huge hassle.
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God. Yes, you've already done it.
I already done it. Like, I don't want to go through it again. I don't think I'm even done with my last
Yeah.
name.
Has there been anything else that's been helpful for you through this whole process that you'd like to share with other NPEs, maybe new NPEs listening?
Yeah. I think for me, obviously my husband was a big help because he was there through it all. And the NPE groups were a big help too. And just being able to scream into the void and then have the void understand and hear you and listen to you. And the void become actual people and names and, people you can chat with. But I think for me was, what helped me was kind of refining that identity. Like, and I'm going to speak from personal experience. So growing up, it was hard, coming out as gay and going through that process and trying to figure out who I was and then kind of running away basically. And with the revelation, I felt like I had a restart at a chance to find out who I was. And I didn't need a restart. Obviously, no one ever does, especially if you're unsure about who you are as a person. But I felt like I was given the okay to kind of restart and find my own self. And I think that really helped me just feeling more secure with who I am. I'm Danny. I'm also Javier. And I'm an MPE, but I'm not just an MPE. I'm gay. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I'm a student. I'm an employee. I am myself. And the choices that my parents made, that's their choices. Now I have the opportunity to make my choices. And I'm going to make them for me.
Danny, if people wanted to get in touch with you, contact you, learn more about your story, would you be open to that?
Of course. You can find me on Instagram. I have an Instagram page. I think it's private. It's so you just have to request a follow, but I pretty much approve all requests. But it's Javi, JAVI __ Cito, CITO.
I'll put your Instagram handle down below. And Danny, thank you so much for sharing your story with me today. I just got so much out of listening to you.
Thank you for having me. It's nice sharing the story with someone who understands,
These stories are here for us to identify with. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, email npestories@gmail.com. You do not have to give any identifying information. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, I'd like to hear from you. Subscribe to this podcast to hear more. Come heal with us.